title of this week's CQM forecast alert is A Key for Economic Growth in 2021 Q1 is Personal Consumption Expenditure. These are the main economic indicators updated in this week's CQM. Although the increase in employment was small, working hours increased significantly. Therefore, wages and salaries on the income side were revised upward. PCA forecast of economic growth was adjusted upward due to the January financial indicators. Shipments of manufactured goods and construction spending affect neither component only on the expenditure side. In this week's CQM, there is a considerable gap in economic growth forecast on both the expenditure and income side. This is because actual figures for January economic indicators are only employment statistics and financial market variables. The reason for the low economic growth rate on the expenditure side is the sluggish consumer spending. On the other hand, the reason for the high economic growth rate on the income side is the steady growth in wage and salary and disbursement. The economy has begun to pick up for the past 2 weeks. Headline inflation began to rise in mid-January, with growth exceeding 3%. PCA has updated actual January employment statistics, stock prices, and interest rate spread. PCA is forecasting a normal economic growth rate of about 2% before the coronavirus. Headline inflation is expected to exceed 3%, and gasoline prices are expected to skyrocket. It is predicted that real personal consumption expenditure will decrease by more than 2% due to sluggish retail sales and increasing inflation. Conclusion from this week's US CQM forecast alert. Due to a few actual January economic indicators in 2021 Q1, there is a considerable gap among the forecast of economic growth. Based on the CQM's average GDP and PCA forecast, it's a good idea to assume that the current economic growth rate is 1% to 2.5%. Updating January retail sales and CPI will reduce the gap in economic growth rate forecast. This slide contained information about this week's detailed CQM forecast, the original developer of CQM, and CQM theory papers.